Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about leading. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do I lead my team into the next wave of web development? Well, I don't know what the next wave is going to be in web development or what that means, but leading a team is and into like what I'm assuming in an unknown future. It's that's something I can help you with, I think. So the first thing that I suggest to people when you're going to lead a team, if now I'm assuming that you're going to be a tech lead or something like that, is first and foremost you do what I call the code inventory. And the code inventory is basically that you go through the project that you have and you learn and you work with the code for long enough to understand, all right, this is sort of the text that this is the text that you're using, this is sort of the domain, these are the features that your system has, and this is the setup, etc., etc. And then you create a technical roadmap for adjustments and improvements and suggestions for how to improve this code base and make it into something that is sustainable and scalable and flexible, etc., etc. And then you post that roadmap to your stakeholders and make your suggestions. You prioritize it, and then you start working. So that's number one, and that brings you to a very important point in your leadership, which is the only, in my opinion, that this is the way it should work. You now have proven to everybody in your team that you are capable of doing the job. You can lead. You lead by example because you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't even do this. You won't be able to figure. And then like leading your team is sort of like it basically comes down to one and only one thing, and that is that you can contribute with something that the team doesn't know how to do, as long as you know how to do it. Which is the thing that I think is hilarious, because a lot of software companies, they hire a manager whose only contribution to the software team is that they know how to hold a meeting. That's the only thing they actually contribute with. They can hold a meeting, send out emails, like these sorts of arbitrary little things that you can take a serious software developer and have them do as well. Or host a Scrum process, which is, yes, as I said, it's a meeting. It's just another meeting. That's it. And when you have that sort of leadership, the only thing you really can do is to hold a meeting with your team and then ask them, how do you want to work? How should we do things? And come with these high-level suggestions on how to structure a Kanban board or a work process, etc., etc. And then ask them, can you please go and check the code and see what we should do in order to be future-proof, etc., etc., and then take them at their word. But if you don't know any better, that's all you can really do. And that's why I tell people, don't invest in higher level management. It is silly, waste of time, and usually not worth the money. Invest in serious software developers who are in a stage of their career where they want to take on leadership roles, because people who used to do coding are a lot more effective at this than someone who just learned how to be a manager. That's my 2 cents on it. So that's why I think that leading by example is a very good thing. The closer you can be to fresh technical knowledge, the more effective you will be at leading your team into the future. Anywho, once you have established a technical roadmap of improvements and so forth, your focus should be, number one, stabilize the work process. That goes above all else, which is the difference between a philosopher programmer and a real master programmer, incidentally. Because a real master programmer will understand that trends come and go, hypes are everywhere, there are tons of juniors and people around in the company who are all like sort of like they actually don't really know much, they just regurgitate whatever Google is saying or whatever anybody else is saying, right? But they can't deliver results. And you have to be able to maneuver in a situation, and this is sort of where this seniority or like this established, like if you establish yourself as a real professional, this helps a lot, because when people can hear that you know what you're talking about, they're more willing to listen to you when you have an idea that goes either a little bit against the mainstream or is slightly in a different direction than what they themselves want. So when you're dealing with people who all think that a highly complicated microservices architecture is the right way for a small e-commerce platform, you can basically say that, yeah, it might be something we scale into, but right now our problem is actually just this tiny system, so it's probably better for us to just run with a monolith to start off with and then focus a lot on segmenting our modules so we don't get spaghetti code, which is the way that you scale a monolith. Because for a junior, an ignorant software developer doesn't understand that there are many ways of solving problems, and when you figure out what the different patterns that you can follow in order to solve problems, and you really truly understand how legacy code and all this stuff gets that it happens, then you can make these sorts of informed decisions. It's sort of like how you tell kids to not run with fire, because if they don't know any better, they're going to burn down the house. But when an adult uses fire, you know that you don't have to tell them to not run around and burn down the house, usually, because they've matured to a point where they know what they're doing. That's what you're looking for. So you're looking for stabilizing the work process so that the consistency, you created like a delivery pipeline where you have ensured that the quality is good, like tests are being run, you have automation, you have like an easy way to like roll back, roll forward, like all of this sort of stuff, so that you fight the thing that is most important, which is quality over time. That is the most important thing that you can focus on. It does not matter what you're working with. And when you talk about the future of the web, there is nothing in the future that you don't know exactly what the future is going to hold. So the closer you can fit your solutions to these very flexible, I call them disposable solutions, or things that are very close to the standards, because whenever you use a third-party library or a new fancy tool or something like that, there's always that way off where you might lock yourself into a solution that sort of makes it impossible for you to change further down the line, or at a very high cost at the very least. And you should always be looking out for that. You shouldn't be like commitment afraid to something, but you should know what the impact is and try to bet on stable solutions, because as I said, the thing that matters is that the system is working in a stable fashion and you can consistently deliver results regardless of what the requirements are. And that's very difficult if you are too experimental, if you just never actually think about the long term and you always focus on the latest and trendiest tools and rewriting things and giving into hype and so forth. And that requires a great deal of personal maturity. That's why I tell people, focus on the delivery pipeline. How can you make it so that every story is as fast as possible and has as little as possible at the very least fear, the release fear, because the release fear is a very real thing. That's my number one problem when I deal with almost every team. Everybody's afraid, or like they avoid hitting the release button or merging when it's going to go out to production, etc., etc. When they don't feel comfortable in their setup. And that should be your focus. Your focus should be that it is like as low effort and as low risk as working on your local computer to run something out into production. It's probably never going to get to be perfect, but that should be your focus. I promise you that's going to be a very good investment for you. So what I want you to take away from this is that to lead a software team, it really comes down to, in my opinion, either you are a leader who knows what you're doing, you're actually a software developer, or you're not. If you're not, the only thing you can do is to contribute with whatever the team doesn't have. So if you're dealing with a bunch of junior software developers and you're a high-level manager, the only thing you can do is pray. You're not going to be able to do much. You're going to have to sort of live with the fact that this is probably going to be a decent project. If you're lucky, it's going to be a decent project, but you're never going to make it work at like a high skill world-class level. It's never going to happen because you simply lack the talent within yourself and within the team to make strong technical decisions. If you're lucky and you have experienced, well-balanced, pragmatic master types in your team, then your best bet is to empower them to make good technical decisions while you take care of the meetings and all this other stuff that they are either I don't know, unwilling to do or unable to do. We can say whatever we want to make people feel better, but that's what it comes down to. If you are a real software developer and you're going to take on a tech lead position or something like that, the best thing for you is to do, number one, inventory. First and foremost, you need to know what you are responsible for. You need to understand where the bottlenecks are, where the legacy is, how the system sort of works, what's the stack, etc., etc., and then create a checklist or a roadmap or something like that to improve in the areas that you need improving. Focus on the stuff that, as I was saying, leads to step number 2. A stable work process that is flexible, where you can rewrite things of the system without a lot of impact, or you can ship things without having release fear over time. Don't invest in a lot of fancy 20% useful things that make some subjective thing a little bit nicer. Focus first and foremost on the 80%. And the 80% is just consistently just being able to, it's like a pulse or a ping, just consistently producing. Produce. Something goes wrong, alright, a very low effort rollback, fix it, produce. It's like a heartbeat. You're trying to get a heartbeat flow going. And if you can reach that point, I promise you, you're going to be ready for whatever happens in the future on the web. Have a great day.